Thanks for tuning in to That's Pretty Sweet with Jeff from Jeff's Candy Shop. Today we will be hearing from Chef Saidah Farrell, owner and CEO of Olivia Confections. They are known for crafting artisan marshmallows and gourmet hot chocolate experiences. Thank you for listening and enjoy.
Thanks for doing this with
Yeah,
me.
absolutely.
I'm pretty
My
excited.
pleasure.
This is the first one. So, as I was preparing for this, I Googled you and did some research. And it was kind of crazy because you have so many different things that brought you to this point right here in Shaker Heights in Cleveland, Ohio. And so I just wanted to start sort of when you were a kid. Because I was looking, you're a military kid.
Yeah.
You sort of lived all over the east side of the United States. And then you moved up to Cleveland, but you went from the corporate world to being a chef to an entrepreneur and now like a full-blown business owner. And so if you want to start back when you were a kid, and then we'll work our way back to now.
So far back, but yeah, so I'm an Army brat, and I'm a proud Army brat. So, born in Kentucky, but then we ended up in like Fort Dix in Jersey. My dad's in the Army, and he never took us when he went overseas, so we stayed like in the States or whatever when he went overseas. But so we lived in Fort Dix for a little while, and then as Army kids do, we packed up probably every 3 years to move somewhere else. So after that was Pennsylvania. He was my father's a drill sergeant, and yeah, right. It was.
That's crazy.
But then he was a ROTC instructor at Mansfield University. So we ended up in Mansfield, Pennsylvania, and one of my nephews actually lives there right now. It's really funny, but that he ended up there. But yeah, so then back to Jersey, and then eventually to New York. And then that's when like my adult life started at that point.
He's back in New York.
In New York. I mean, I graduated high school in Jersey, and I got a scholarship, an Army ROTC scholarship. I did not want it.
Did you have to do stuff for that then? Or?
Yeah, well, I had to. So I wound up going to Syracuse. On a scholarship, and it was an ROTC nursing scholarship. I didn't want any of that. My father was just like, this is how you're going to school, and I'm like, whatever. So I actually got into Naval Academy, and I was supposed to go to prep school for Naval Academy, and I was like, I don't want to do that either. So I wound up taking this scholarship to Syracuse, and I lasted a year and a half on my scholarship because I just knew it wasn't for me at all. So when I left school, it was, while I was in school, some of the people, some of my classmates, my roommate and a friend of mine, we had started like this little jewelry business. And that was when my entrepreneurial bug started. Then I was like, we bought this jewelry like dirt cheap in the city. And then we came back to Syracuse and like sold it.
That's all, like you bought it like Manhattan.
It was like 34th Street and 6th Avenue. There's like this jewelry store. You can go and buy jewelry from there. And I've been back to the city a few times, and I'm like, this is where it all started.
That's awesome.
And so I was selling jewelry at first, but that's where I had decided like I gotta work for myself.
Yeah. You like that process, working by yourself.
Yeah.
So you were in New York, and then at some point you moved over to Georgia? Or?
Yeah, so I have 2 children. Okay. So when the youngest one, she was about a year and a half. And actually the oldest one was 4, and she was in preschool, but I knew I wasn't sending her to public school in New York. I just didn't know what that looked like for us. We lived in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
So I had made a decision to move them out of New York for school. So my parents, my dad retired in Georgia. So he and my mom were in Georgia. So I just packed up and we moved to Georgia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know what year was that about?
Oh God, that was 2003. Yeah, because Grace was born in 2002, and we moved in like 2003. Yeah.
Okay. And so you lived there for a while. Do you remember what year you moved to Cleveland?
Yeah, that was 2009. That's an easy one. Yeah, February 2009. I drove the U-Haul by myself.
That's crazy. Right? By yourself?
It was bananas. So before GPS, right? So I had a printed Yahoo Maps map out.
Printed map. Okay, no phone. Okay.
Just a printed map of how to get from Georgia to Ohio. And it was a 14-hour drive that took me 3.5 days.
Wow. 3.5 days is a crazy amount of time to do
3.5 days, because it was super anxiety, super stressful. I was a really good driver. But the first leg was, because we lived in Southwest Georgia. So the first leg was leaving Southwest Georgia and getting to Atlanta. in a
So
U-Haul.
literally still
right, with two kids. It was just on 285, all of the traffic, and I stopped and I was like, we're just gonna get a hotel for the night. So for them, they were really young, like 9 and 6. So it was a total adventure for them, you know.
Yeah.
But me, I'm stressed out.
Yeah, because you got 2 little kids in the car. They're probably rolling down the window.
Oh, well, she didn't roll down the window, but for some reason, this U-Haul, the doors didn't lock.
Yeah.
And so I was really freaked out about the doors not being able to lock. And then it was, I think it wasn't the long seat. It was 2 seats, right? So I had a 6-year-old in the middle and the 9-year-old on the side. And so they did switch up at one point, but I remember being on this little bitty bridge, and there was like 18-wheelers like passing me by on this little bitty bridge.
Passing you on like the
like
the other traffic.
Exactly. Oh, okay. And I'm like freaked out. I'm like driving this U-Haul by myself. And my daughter Victory, she was looking out the window and she was like, "Oh, look at those mountains. They're so pretty." And I'm like looking at it, and I'm looking at my map, and I'm like, I have to drive through the mountains. And so like we're driving through these winding mountains. I don't know why Yahoo chose this for me or whatever.
Yeah.
But I took a wrong turn. And so I had to get this, I was going up like a steep hill and I had to do a U-turn. And like I made this U-turn into someone's driveway on a hill and got stuck.
Oh no.
And so like they're asleep and I'm like trying to move backwards and get off this hill. Yeah, it was bananas. Oh, no. And so I finally made it off the hill. So that was the second night that we stopped and just got a hotel room. But it was a wild, wild ride. And then the next day we did Tennessee to Kentucky. And like we stopped in Kentucky and like we went into this restaurant for pizza and like all eyes were like,
yeah, Kentucky.
Right.
Oh, no, Kentucky.
So that was the half day. So we stopped at a hotel, but then we made the rest of the way to Ohio and like I unpacked the truck, parked the U-Haul, returned the U-Haul, and I didn't drive for like a year and a half after that. It was crazy.
I can only imagine. That's so scary. That's a long way to go with kids.
It was an adventure for sure.
So prior to that journey, so you said that was 2009 you did that?
Yeah, that was 2009.
So I read, so you were doing some sort of corporate job
up
until that point. Before we get to that, what was your job? What were you doing?
I was actually BlackBerry technical support.
BlackBerry technical, like the phone.
For Sprint.
And then they couldn't get you to Ohio, and that's why they went out of business.
Right. So I had made a plan to move from Georgia to Ohio, but I knew I needed a job, right? I had secured an apartment, but I needed a job, so I worked online. So when I got off my job in Georgia, I was working at the hospital. So when I would leave that job, I'd go home and do BlackBerry technical support at night on the phone.
Okay.
So I was able to transfer that job to Ohio. So I had a job waiting for me technically when I got to Ohio.
When you got to Ohio.
Yeah, so I didn't have to worry about interrupting my income or anything. Okay. So yeah,
So that was still part of the plan when you got to Ohio?
That was still part of the plan. Yeah, that was part of the plan was like, okay, I've got this job. I can find another job when I get to Ohio, but we've got income coming in. So
that makes sense. So you get to Ohio, you have this job with BlackBerry.
Yeah.
And then 2008, 2009 recession hits.
Yeah.
How was that?
It was.
How was going through that with 2 little kids by yourself and a new city?
Yeah, but really 2010 is when it hit.
The ripples of the...
Right. Gotcha. So the recession, and then I was let go from my job, and they gave me unemployment, which was at that time, like you got 26 weeks plus another 26 weeks. Like it went on forever or whatever, right?
Pretty crazy, yeah.
Yeah. So I had unemployment, but I kind of like, what is the decision? Am I going to just find another job or am I going to, I had an option to go back to school. So, because the Pell Grant was available to me to go back to school. So I grabbed a physical copy of Tri-C's, their catalog, and I just started flipping through, like, what do I want to do, So I started flipping through, and I got to like photography and culinary, because I wanted something more hands-on. Like everything I've done before that wasn't really hands-on. It was like I did PowerPoint presentations and never saw like the end result of anything that happened, even with people like fixing their phones or whatever, like I fixed their phone, but there was just nothing gratifying about it afterwards. So
That makes sense.
Yeah, so I was like, am I going to go culinary or photography? So I kind of did both that first year. I took like some really great photography classes, and it was a film photography class that I was taking, and then going to culinary classes as well. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll become like a food stylist or food photography, you know. And then I was just like, well, how am I going to do food photography with 2 kids, you know, because it's a lot of work.
That is, yeah.
Right. And so I wound up just going like full on culinary, which was a lot of work on its own.
I can't think of it. Restaurant industry and like hospitals might be the craziest thing to be.
It's really wild. I remember the first year that I was working in a restaurant, and it was New Year's Eve, and I had to work, you know, and I have 2 small kids at home. So I sent one to a friend's house, one to another friend's house, and we did not ring in the new year together, which was really weird. And I was just like, yeah, this isn't for me, but it was for me. But what does it look like for me?
Right. You just know? Not in that like aspect.
Right. Yeah. So.
Okay. So you go and you learn, you become a pastry chef, and then you start working at a company, and then I read somewhere, so you're doing this pastry chef, but you sort of had to like run what you were doing by a head chef.
Yeah. So of course there's an executive chef, so I couldn't make any decisions, you know, so the executive chef would tell me, here's what you're making or whatever. But one day I had made some whoopie pies, and so then someone came in and ate one and then asked for like a dozen or 2 dozen or whatever like that. And so it wasn't something that was like on the menu. I just decided, I want to try this and make it. And then I was like, oh, they bought that? I might have a business. Because when you're at Tri-C, you really, you do like menu planning, and you're really learning like how to own your own restaurant. So,
that makes sense.
I had built like, you know, what would my company look like, and, you know, what would my business look like, or pastry shop or whatever I thought it was going to be then. And so, yeah, I had this idea that, I can open up my own shop. So from there, I started taking, so I had graduated from Tri-C, and ECDI had a food incubator class. And I went to the food incubator class to learn more about like, you know, my business plan and what does my food business look like. And so then I started vending around the city, doing like farmers markets and flea markets and stuff.
And you're like baking goods at this point?
Yeah.
Like all sorts of things? Or?
Well, no. Oddly enough, I had a whole menu of what I wanted to do.
Okay. You like came up with like a game plan beforehand?
Right.
And like, I'm going to hit the markets with this thing.
Exactly.
And knock it out.
So this was my menu, but so there was this request for s'mores, because like, you know, there's a food holiday for everything, right? So it was like National S'more Day, so it was like, hey, can someone do s'mores for National S'more Day? And I'm like, I'll give it a shot. So I started making marshmallows and infusing them with like tea and beer, and like they were selling.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah, and then I made the graham crackers, and the graham crackers were selling. Well, at first people thought I was selling soap, like the way that it was packaged and everything. They didn't know what it was.
Yeah, then like the cellophane bags.
It was crazy. Like I didn't have a booth set up. I didn't have signs or anything. I didn't know what that was doing. So like I'm just standing there like, please buy from me.
Right.
But then like I had a little signs. I started making like, we bought like this A sign and like had chalk on it or whatever. It didn't even sit on the ground. It was on the table.
Like a little A-frame thing?
Yeah. But it was the saddest looking booth. It really was.
That's funny.
But you know, the once they so we had samples, and once people figured out, they're marshmallows and graham crackers and s'mores. So I started selling them, and then my little one had to go to the bathroom, so I left the oldest one, and they're probably 12 and 9 at this point. So the oldest one was at the booth by herself, and I took the little one to the bathroom, and I get back and we're like sold out. And I'm like, what was that? And it was just like her I don't know, she just became this persona where she was just like pulling people into the booth and selling to them, which is totally outside of her comfort zone.
Yeah.
But she just had like, as she says, she writes a script in her head and just says the same thing over and over again. And she just really just started like, it's like, oh, look at this cute little girl. Oh, here, take my money. And I was like, you're the face of the booth from now.
That's awesome. That is so true though. Like, I mean, you come up with like what you're going to say and you're kind of riffing it. And then you hear the customer and you adjust it.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's interesting. That's cool though. She's like 12 years old, natural
right.
sales. That's pretty,
And it has benefited her for sure later on in life.
That's cool. So you're going to the markets.
Yeah.
Stuff's starting to pick up,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, I'm going to open a brick and mortar location.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
Worst idea ever.
Worst idea ever. What's that thought process? Like, how did it start going?
The thought was, how much money do I need to open up my own brick and mortar, right? And
because that's the dream. That's like every entrepreneur person. They're like, how can I get my own spot?
It's a dream, but it's can easily become a nightmare. So I had a business plan, and I raised about like $35,000, right? So between friends and family, money that I had saved, and then getting a loan, I got a microloan from. So I got a microloan, and so I had enough money to open, but not to sustain myself. So I bought equipment, and the company that was before there was a food company there before me, but they didn't have a grease trap.
Oh, wow.
So when the health department came in, they were like, "You have to have a grease trap," and I'm like, "Oh, what is a grease trap?"
Right.
Right? I don't know,
this
like
thing that flows under the ground.
So that meant drilling a hole to put, to put a grease trap in, because the plumber wanted to put it in the basement. So I had to hire a plumber, drill a hole, buy the grease trap. And there went some money that I had put aside for our sign, because we were going to buy a sign to put outside. So the money that I needed for the sign went to that. So I had this brick and mortar with no signage to say we're here. I think I had this plastic sign that was up, but the wind blows, and you still don't know who's there, right?
You're playing a game of how many times you gotta go pick it up.
Right. It was bananas. And then I wanted an electric oven instead of a gas oven, because I didn't want to have to pay to get the gas installed and all of that.
That makes sense.
And so I got my first electricity bill, and it was $700. And I'm like, what? It's because I had a convection oven that was just running all day long.
The fan and everything?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
So it was running all day long, and I'm just shut it down. And, and then, so I was there for about 6 months before people really knew that I was there. I didn't have the marketing plan. I didn't do all the things it's not if you build it, they will come. You have to market it. So I didn't have the marketing dollars. People really didn't know I was there until about 6 months. I started picking up, but I was already behind. And I said, we have to close it down. So it was most restaurants, bakeries, whatever, it's not hey, we're closing in 5 days. It's just we're done, know? So it was disappointing, and I kind of just retreated and just started, licking my wounds, all right, I'm defeated and embarrassed. And I felt really embarrassed too and the other mistake that I made too was I was known for making marshmallows and s'mores. I didn't sell them at the shop, but one time.
Really?
Yeah.
You were a baker?
Yeah, I was we're going to make cakes and cupcakes and cookies, and no one knew us for that, right? So I'm baking all this stuff and wasting all this product. And so that was a mistake too, not leaning into what people knew me for. So that was a dream that was a nightmare, and I just had to walk away from it.
Yeah. Well, that's intense. I can only imagine. Okay, so you shut things down, pretty sad.
Yeah.
But then you sort of get into teaching.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah. So before I started teaching, I was I worked at another bakery, and then one aspect of the bakery was educating people on how to bake. So we did teach people how to bake, and so after I left that, it was independent, right? It was an independent bakery. So then I went for the money, and the money means you go for corporations or whatever. So and it's almost it all lined itself up. So I decided to go work at this restaurant. I won't name names, but I worked at this corporate restaurant, and it was nothing but teenage kids that were working there, right? So it was almost I have my experience of working with high school kids, and then the associate dean from Tri-C had called me and was just hey, it's Chef Karen Manath, love her. So she's there's a job opening at Cleveland Metropolitan School District, because she knew the chef instructor that was there, Chef Mike Chokalski, and she's there's an opening there. Would you be interested? And I'm the dream. Now, when we talk about the dream was to be a teacher. Before I went to Syracuse, it was all I wanted to do was be an educator.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, so I definitely jumped at it, had the interview, did really well, and got offered the position. And another dream that becomes like,
what happened there?
I absolutely loved being an educator. I
Yeah, you're
really
so
did
good
love
at
it.
educating
Yeah,
too.
thank you. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. I love the students. I love the environment. It was really great. But the COVID hit, right? So I think I actually had COVID before everyone knew that we had COVID.
That was like a
Yeah,
thing.
because March 9th. So I am missing one aspect of it. So while I was teaching, I introduced entrepreneurship into my classroom.
You brought it in.
Yeah,
Oh, that's pretty cool.
So if you're familiar with Lemonade Day,
okay.
So Lemonade Day teaches kids like, we're going to make a recipe, cost the recipe, and then we're going to sell it. How much are we going to sell it for?
Okay.
And then now we're going to save some money, and what are we saving towards? And so it's this whole program with Lemonade Day. And so I introduced that into the classroom, and the kids made lemonade. We taste tested it with other students. And then CMSC was just rolling out their food truck at the time. So the prize for the kid with the best lemonade was you get to sell it on the bus, and you keep the profit of it.
Oh, that's a pretty good.
Yeah. So I was like, so I'm teaching entrepreneurship, and I'm like, man, I really want my own thing again.
Yeah. You start getting the hunger for it. Yeah.
I was just like, oh, I really want, because, one thing about entrepreneurship is you set your own schedule, right? If you work 80 hours, if you work 100, if you work 20, it's on you. If you start your day at 9 in the morning, that's on you, right? So it was really just like, and then not having like a supervisor. I don't like having a supervisor. I don't like anyone telling me or looking at my work or whatever. It just doesn't interest me. So as I'm teaching it, I'm like, how can I start my own thing again? And so I did have what I called a s'more survival kit, right?
Okay.
It was just this little bitty box of graham crackers, marshmallows, like the one that I gave you, right?
Yeah,
just this little bitty thing that I sold for like $5. And then I got an order from on Etsy. So I had it on Etsy.
Okay.
So that was feeding the entrepreneurship. Like, okay, I can be creative and do my entrepreneurship, still have a day job. And so I did a wedding, and she was gaga for it. And then I did, then someone contacted me and said, I need 60 of these for my subscription box. Because again, National S'mores Day is coming around.
Yep.
And she's like, oh, my theme is s'mores for August, and I need like 60. And I'm like, what the heck is a subscription box?
Right.
Had no idea what it was. My kids knew what subscription boxes were because they were always begging me for like, I get this thing once a month? And I'm like, who would pay once a month to get the same thing over and over again?
Right.
So I started researching subscription boxes, and I'm like, this makes sense.
Yeah.
Because every month I know how many subscribers I have. I don't have to waste product. I just make what I need. And so I started creating like, what does that subscription box look like? And funny enough, not a lot of people know, the first one that I tried to do was a croissant of the month, because I know, because I make, French pastry croissants. So I was like, oh, I'm going to freeze them and ship them. And so I started testing the shipping, and croissants have yeast in it.
Right.
So I wasn't like really, I didn't have enough dry ice in them. So they would show up already like proofed.
Okay. So you were like shipping them ready to bake.
Yeah. Okay. So they were like in this little container, because there's a couple companies online. There's a couple companies that do it right. I did not do it right. So I had this whole idea of what my croissants were going to look like, and I was going to get on camera, and you just bake them for Sunday brunch, and blah. So I'm testing out the shipping, and they're just like exploding all over the place. And I'm like, okay, not doing that. Let's start over.
So you go back to marshmallows.
So I go back to marshmallows because, I'm known for these marshmallows. I was actually in Target one day, and someone was like, hey, I know you. You're the marshmallow lady, aren't you? And I'm like, I guess that's what I'm known for. Yeah. So I go back to the drawing board, and I'm like, what does this s'more survival kit look like on a monthly basis?
Yeah.
So I knew I wanted the fresh baked graham crackers, and can I do a different flavor graham cracker every month? And then I can do a different flavored marshmallow like every single month. Because when I was working at the restaurant, I made ice cream. And I got up to like 99 flavors of ice cream.
Really?
Yeah, some real funky ones too. I made like a coconut curry one. I had a good time making ice cream. But I'm like, how does that translate to a marshmallow? Can I do a different marshmallow every single month? And that's what I started doing, was just like, so I created this box where and then I aligned it with the holidays too. So every month you would get like a different marshmallow with the theme of a holiday, and it became the Marshmallow of the Month Club.
That's pretty cool. So that's the birth of Marshmallow of the Month
That's
Club.
the birth of the Marshmallow of the Month Club.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what makes your marshmallow special? Because I tried one the other day, and first of all, it cooked all the way through like instantly. And then it was so much, the texture was like really gooey in a way that I've never like even eaten a marshmallow. And so tell me about that. And then I guess, well, go ahead. I'll let you explain.
Well, you had a super fresh marshmallow for sure. Because like, if they age about 7 days, then like, they kind of roast like a store-bought marshmallow does, but yours was super duper fresh. Like I made it that day. But so marshmallows are made with pork gelatin. So I took the pork gelatin out, and I started using I tried beef gelatin. But when you mix the beef gelatin with like lemon, because lemon was one of my signature flavors, it had this real funky smell to it. So I went from using the beef gelatin to a fish gelatin. So it doesn't taste like fish. It's a kosher gelatin. So that opened up a different market to me. Not that my marshmallows are kosher, but it did open up like people who were looking for a non-pork marshmallow.
That makes sense,
and I don't use any artificial flavoring, any artificial coloring at all. And so I have a huge following in California, which is interesting. And my first subscriber was out in California. But so fish gelatin, no artificial flavoring, no artificial coloring, and they're super fresh.
They are.
And the size too. I think the size makes me unique as well, because some people do like these ginormous marshmallows, and my subscribers like the smaller ones because they can just put it on the graham crackers, and they don't have to cut them or anything. They just fit perfectly on the graham crackers.
Well, that is like a good point, because it is like that perfect square shape, which is the exact size of the graham cracker. So when you make this more, and then with the little chocolates, it's like everything is like real lined up.
Exactly.
So I did appreciate that when I was making it.
All done by design.
That's cool. So you've been running this, and then so what year do you think was that? Like
that was 2019. I launched in August of 2019.
And you've been building COVID's going on. You're working on that. You're cooking in a church as like a commercial kitchen there.
Well, first I was at home. So
you're at home
so I was making marshmallows at home. You're not allowed to ship from home, people. But so so I was making these marshmallows at home, and so the subscription box, it was 2020, and then July of 2020, COVID is in full swing, and we didn't know what it was going to look like going back to school. So I had to make a decision in July. Am I going back to teach, or am I going full time into my business? And I had started my business with like 5 subscribers, and then I grew to 250 so I started in August 2019, and then, it was Black Lives Matters, and the marketplace that I was on was amplifying Black voices and Black businesses. So I went from 5 to 20 to 50 to like 250 like overnight.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
I had built in a budget so that, I could take a certain dollar amount out of each box to be able to pay bills. And so I said, how much do I need to make every month? Can I leave that job? What does it look like? And I just paid off a lot of debt, and was like, we're going to go 100% into this. So
that's cool.
I left teaching, and I went 100% in my business of August 2020.
August 2020.
Yeah, a year later.
That is cool. So you that's an interesting concept. So you like factored in your personal life, your bills already. You set yourself a budget. See, that's an interesting point, because that's even something that I look at and sort of struggling with, is that how do you factor like paying yourself out of the business, especially so young? Because when you listen to like business podcasts, or like I went to business school, like all these things are like, oh, you're not going to make money for like the next 5-10 years. Well, it's like, okay, but you can't really build a business if you're not focusing on it pretty much the whole time. So how do you like
Yeah, I think I might have been inspired by Matt Fish from Melt, right?
Okay,
I heard
yeah,
him speak at Tri-C one time, and he was like, I slept in the restaurant.
yeah,
And, he was like, but it's just like going bare bones with
yeah,
like your lifestyle, right? If you want to build a business, do you need a car? Can you just ride the Rapid? Do you need, like, what does your housing look like? Like, do you need a 3-bedroom house or whatever? So, I mean, and so I just paid off a lot of debt before I made that leap so that I could start with like 0 debt in my personal life.
yeah.
And then we just scaled back. Like, I mean, cable, what's cable?
Right, yeah.
Those kind of decisions,
anymore.
right?
Yeah.
And I mean, my kids were like that. My kids did not have cable when they were small and we lived in Georgia. Like, they loved going to their grandparents' house because there was every channel to just sit there and watch.
Right.
But they were already used to that. But I scaled like everything back. And but I also said I need to make X amount of money. So when people price, I had priced my product, I went backwards. I said, how much money do I need to make per month?
Yeah.
And then add that on to like all my costs, all my expenses, to make sure that I could pay myself.
Yeah.
So I built it into the box. So every time I sold the box, I paid myself. The only bad thing about that was when I got busy, I didn't factor in paying someone else.
Right.
So I was really just only paying myself, and then I'm growing, and I really didn't understand, like, how can I pay someone else and still pay myself?
Right.
So that was a struggle.
Because you're sort of factored as like the one and only employee.
Right. Yeah.
And then, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. But I said, okay, when I hit 400 subscribers, I can pay someone.
Yeah.
But finding that person that I could pay the same amount that I'm paying myself, because of course you're not paying yourself like $30 an hour,
exactly.
right?
You're making minimum wage.
Right. Less than minimum wage.
Living wage.
Yeah, living wage, a barely living wage. But how do you find that person? So it wasn't easy to find someone that was willing to do the same amount of work.
Yeah.
So I did it like piecework. So I paid someone, if you make X amount of cookies, I'll pay you X amount of dollars for the cookies. That's the only way I was able to afford someone, was to let them just on your own time or whatever, you make the cookies, I'll pay you for making the cookies. And, but once they found a job, then I had to find another person to do it. So I ended up doing it by myself again, but
Yeah, that makes sense. So the piecework is like a good concept because you get stuck in like a mindset of like, so many hours a week and like all that kind of stuff. But you go to piecework and then it's motivating for someone to like go quicker too.
Absolutely.
That's cool. That's a good idea.
Yeah. And I had to do that because my kids, right?
Were you paying them by the piece?
Piecework.
That makes sense.
Because they're watching TV and working, and I'm like, you need to do X amount.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? I'll pay you for every box that you do. So it was like 25 cents. I was paying them like 25 cents because when I started, I had a stamp. I had a regular box with a stamp. I didn't have a branded box. So I'm like, I need someone to stamp these boxes, and they'd be watching TV like. So that's what I got.
That's even. I feel the same. I wish I could pay myself in piecework because I'll be packing these nut bags, and then if I'm listening to a podcast too hard, I'm like, I'm only doing like one.
Right.
Or so like, what am I doing here? That's funny. Okay, so you've been doing that. Couple of years, things are growing.
Yeah.
You're up to 250 subscribers. Eventually, you hit 300.
Yeah.
And then, if we move forward to 2023, kind of a big year for you as far as.
Well, I mean, 2022 is when it really started for me. Yeah, I mean, but so 2021, so I kept growing and growing, and then 2021, I ended the year with a really nice profit.
Okay.
And so made another mistake where credit was good, profit was good, and I was like, I have the money to start buying in bulk.
Okay.
So I'm going to start buying in bulk.
Okay.
Bad idea. So I'm using my money from the profit of my business to buy in bulk, and then the conversation about recession hits, and people are looking at it like, do I need a Marshmallow of the Month club every single month? And so subscribership started dwindling down.
Okay.
And so now I've bought all this stuff in bulk, branded boxes, all this stuff, and I'm not getting I'm not growing, right? I'm not growing. So I'm quickly like, how do I pivot, right?
Yeah.
So the pivot was looking at the pricing, right? Do I lower the price? What goes in the box? So I had like 3 different sizes at that point. And but it just still wasn't converting, because at that point I was marketing, but it was all organic marketing. I wasn't paying for any ads or anything.
All like organic social media.
Yeah, social media, and the marketplace that I was on, they were marketing me as well. But people were still pulling back because, you know, if there's a recession, I need bread, not marshmallows. Right.
For sure.
So I really wasn't sure like how to grow this business or pivot this business. So I knew at that point I needed to get some kind of business coaching. And so I started looking at like all these different programs that were out there. And that's where like 2022, I really got into business coaching. But I was very intentional that I wanted free mentoring. And is there like a pitch associated that I can get some money out of the free mentoring? So I was very intentional about the programs that I was going to be a part of. And I had applied for Goldman Sachs 1 Million Black Women, and that stipend was like $2,000, right? So I was like, oh, that's the start of it. So this is a good idea. But I didn't get into cohort 1 for that. And I couldn't do cohort 2 because my brother was getting married, so I was going to miss classes. So I had to wait for cohort 3. But it really worked out for me, because then I was able to start Jumpstart in their impact program. And that was like, from there, it just took off.
Yeah. So Jumpstart, you won that competition. So what was that like? What can you like explain that process? Like what was, and then get to like, how that, do you do a big pitch at the end and then people vote for you? Or?
Yeah, it was 12 weeks. Okay. So the impact program, you're in the program for 12 weeks and you're really understanding like your value proposition and doing your financials. And it was almost like a mini business plan. So if you've ever seen like the business model canvas, like it's a mini version of the business plan. So you really just understand like who are your key players and how, you know, your growth strategy, and then asking for money. If you get this money, what are you going to do with the money? Right. So it was 12 weeks of that, and great relationships, and the people that were in there, you just start having this network, because prior to that I didn't really have a network of people. And so it was just the lonely entrepreneur. So I've gotten rid of that term solopreneur. I don't use that anymore. But,
take it out of your vocabulary.
But it was very lonely. So you have to get out there and network and meet people. And then at the end of those 12 weeks, we did have to pitch. And so there was, I think, 7 of us that pitched, and it was a 10-minute pitch a piece. And people think 10 minutes is a long time. Yeah, 10 minutes is a long freaking time to pitch. But, you know, like, what am I going to say for 10 minutes? So you get mentors, and I had 2 mentors, Jim and Kyle, and like, this is probably my 3rd pitch. This is actually like my 3rd pitch. I had pitched like earlier in my business. I didn't win those 2 pitches, but so Jim and Kyle, like I gave them my pitch and they just like ripped it apart. And I'm like, oh no. They just ripped it apart because it was a very emotional pitch, and it was just me telling this like story, but it said absolutely nothing, right? So they coached me on, this is what you need, like not what you need to say, but like the cadence of the pitch, right?
Okay, so like actual like presenting style.
Yeah, not even just the presenting style, but just like most people are just like, hi, my name is, this is my business, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, so they were just like, who do you serve? What's the problem, you know? And that you're trying to resolve, and how do you resolve it, and what makes you the right person to lead this company, and what's the traction that you've had, now where are you going? So when I started telling the story from that point of view, like it was a better story for an investor to understand, like where did I come from and where am I going with this business? And so with 7 of us pitching for like 10 minutes a piece, we took a number out of the hat to decide where you were going. I don't even remember what my first number was, but I do remember I traded. And traded? I did trade.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember who I traded with or why I traded. But I was number 6. So for 60 minutes, I'm like, I'm just like, you know, I wasn't really nervous, but I was just like, I was I was more or less paying attention to who went before me and like, what are they doing? What are the questions? Because they had 3 judges, and what are the questions that the judges are asking? And how would I answer that question? And one of them had asked one of the other, I don't want to say contestant, but one of my other cohort members, like, so like, they asked them a SWOT analysis question. And I was like, oh boy, man, that's messed up. Yeah. Because that's like, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats, right? And that's nothing that you have at the top of your top of mind.
It's on like a paper.
Right, exactly.
Crosshairs on it. That's crazy.
That's the one question I remember out of all the questions. And I was just like, oh, that question sucks.
Yeah, that's killer.
So I immediately started thinking about, okay, if they were to ask me that question, what would I say? Yeah. And I kind of got a question like that.
Yeah.
You know, they did ask me like, what's one of the threats to your business? And so I knew to talk about shipping because like the cost of shipping was going up.
Outrageous, yeah.
And then like, so if I have this subscription box and you subscribe in January for the entire year, and then the price of shipping goes up, I got to eat that.
Yeah.
You know, and it eats at my bottom line.
Yeah.
And then it was like shipping, like if I needed a new box, could I get to my, my supplier? Could they send it to me on time? Because shipping was really crazy in like 2021, 2022. With supplier chain issues. And so I knew it was like about shipping. So so it was good that I went later.
Yeah, for
because
sure.
I was able to hear all these wild questions and be like, oh, how would I answer that question? Okay.
That's interesting. A detour from that.
Yeah.
So you have it so that they sort of purchase upfront. Is there like an advantage to that versus like charging their like account once a month? Or?
Some people run their subscription box where every month you get that charge, right? But the benefit is to me, right? So you pay me for 3 months ahead of time, or even a year. I love when I get an annual subscriber, right? So I do. You can do a one-off box. You can buy like once a month, or 3, or 6, or 12. I don't know why I don't do the 9 months. People have asked me for that. But anyway, I get this year worth of a subscriber, and even my larger box, that was like $690 just instantly.
Yeah.
And now I can make some decisions, right?
For sure, yeah.
But the thing is, you got to make sure you still have that money to ship it and buy supplies down the road.
So you have like the freedom up front, but you also got to play like a savings game on your way because you don't want to overdo it in the first. That makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
9 months would be kind of, I feel like that's a petty
it's
amount of
weird,
time.
right?
Like, okay, do half a year a year. Like,
because if you give someone a gift, you're just like, for 9 months, you can have this gift. It's really weird.
And then when you get to the holidays.
Yeah. It's a really weird one.
That is a weird one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so then after that, then you go into chain reaction.
Yeah, well, no. I mean, there was much more before.
There's much more in between.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, like, so after Impact, the Browns ordered 210 boxes.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Me.
Sorry. I thought the Browns, I got them mixed up.
No, the Browns ordered like 210 boxes for the holiday season. At the same time, I'm getting 300 subscribers.
Yeah.
No employees. It's just me.
Yeah.
With like, so it's not just that. So then I also had like, my other B2B customers, right? So I've got like 210 here, other B2B customers, and I'm saying no to nothing. I'm just saying yes to everybody. I'm like, there's no cutoff. Let's go. And then so for Christmas gifts, you got to get them out by the 15th of December. And so, and I was also like promoting like my Hanukkah box too. So I got Hanukkah boxes going. It's bananas. So I'm like, so this is when I moved to the church. So after the Impact, I had moved to the church, and I just like every high school kid I could get my hands on, I was just like, I need help.
Yeah.
So my oldest lives in Chicago, and I flew her home. Like, I need your help.
Like, right now.
Right. I'm like, I know you have a job.
Right. This is an emergency.
Right. I'm like, can you help me? And then the youngest one, she was home from school, so she didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
And then one of her friends came through, and then I got like 3 high school kids. So YOU gave me a kid, and then from East Tech, I got 2 other kids from East Tech, and like everybody had a task.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, so we're building boxes, we're making cookies, we're packing cocoa, because at that time I had launched my cocoa line, so you get cocoa in every single one of your boxes. So
like for like a cup of hot chocolate type thing. Okay.
Yeah. So we're packing marshmallows, hot chocolate, getting the browns. I had a custom box made for the browns, and it was just all this inventory. I'm taking over the entire kitchen. So this is my first opportunity to like have employees that I'm paying hourly.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, today, this is your quota, how many you need to get done, And we pulled it off.
That's impressive.
Yeah, I don't know what our profit looked like after paying all these people, but we pulled it off, and it was stressful and it was fun. But so then the mentorship, after Jumpstart, I got into another mentorship program where it was really just working on your business plan.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of it, you were able to apply for a loan, but I didn't apply for a loan for that one. And then that's when I got into Goldman Sachs 1 Million Black Women. So that was February of 2023.
February 2023.
Yeah,
okay.
And that was a wild one. That was a really good one. That was really good.
We'll dive into that. So the Goldman Sachs, you go through that course, and so what kind of things do they have you work through? How was it different than the first one? And
so Goldman Sachs, the 1 Million Black Women, I think it was the impact program to the next level, which is really interesting because like I was starting to see like emails from people from Jumpstart, and I was like, what do they have to do with Goldman Sachs? Right. And they actually had a partnership, like, so they were actually working with it. I'm like, man, this is God, because because like all of these things are happening, like it's just the continuation, right? So Goldman Sachs, 1 Million Black Women, we had cohorts of 6, and 1863 Ventures, they led the curriculum for it. So we're learning more business, more about your business plan. It really was like about your business plan and your marketing plan as well. And at the end of it, you were able to develop an action plan. But like one of the best parts of it is that you got a business advisor. But it was nothing I expected from this business advisor. She really, like, if I could afford her today, I would hire her today.
Really?
But she was just like, all right, so what are your goals? So we had to work on SMART goals, like 3 SMART goals. She's like, so what are your goals? Then we outlined the goals and how to actually get to the goal. Like, it wasn't some like, hey, what are you trying to do? Like, she held me accountable. I had homework. It was stressful. Yeah. It was a lot of work.
I was reading it, like, she was like actually on you.
It was intense work, but at the end of it, you had this action plan of where you're going to go for like the next 6 months. So it was super helpful. And at the time, I knew I wanted to do Goldman Sachs 10,000 small businesses as well. So while I'm in that program, I'm applying for this other one and going to interviews for the other one as well. So, 1 Million Black Women, it was really dope. So I'm a bit of a competitor.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
So I made sure like I was doing the homework, getting things done, raising my hand for stuff, being very vocal. And there was a pitch competition for that as well. I did not win that pitch competition, but that is okay.
Yeah.
So I love Black women.
Yeah.
And Black women are very powerful and strong and animated in this pitch competition. Like, they were pitching and I was like, oh, wait, I don't have that personality. Right? Okay, yeah. And there was like an audience choice, and there was definitely Katie O'Soul. She was the audience pick, and I was like, I'm voting for her. Right. Her pitch was so freaking dope. And I was just like, I don't know. But they were just so lively. And those who won, they absolutely deserved to win. But that was, that honed my pitch even more.
Yeah.
Like, of who I have to be, instead of, not that I dial it back or anything, but when you're pitching, really know your audience and who you're pitching to and who appreciates what your story is. Like, pitching to men, they do not care about me being a single mom with 2 kids. They do not care about that. You're just like, how much money
how are you just gonna double my
That's all they care about. Oh, and I did another pitch at the same time too. SBDC had another. I think that one, I don't know if that one was scratch made. I can't remember. So while I'm doing Goldman, I'm also doing this. So on Mondays, they both met at the same time.
Oh, no. In person or?
No,
Okay,
virtually.
okay,
right?
well.
So I got my phone set up here, my PC set up here, and I'm like. And for my phone, I have my earpiece in, and I got my mic on the other end, and I'm like, make sure you press mute. Okay.
That's crazy.
It was bananas. But I won the pitch for Small Business Development Center. So that one was a really good one. But all those things that I'm practicing, I'm just constantly honing because I don't show up with the same pitch, right? I'm just like, okay, how are we going to elevate this pitch even more? And at the same time, I met a group of women, the Wonder Women of Food here in Cleveland. There's probably about 20 something of us now. And when I met them, I didn't have the cocoa launched at the time.
Okay.
And I didn't realize that you can actually have a product on the shelf, have a UPC, have it branded.
Yeah.
All these women were doing this. And I'm like, how are you doing this?
Yeah.
And so so I started to see where the business could actually go. And that's been a blessing meeting those women, and really so I'm doing all this stuff at the same time. And so like I said, that I'm a competitor at Goldman.
Yeah.
And I start getting these emails and these phone calls like, hey, we want to talk to you about this, we want to talk to you about that. And I didn't know it was actually an interview to figure out who's going to give the commencement speech after we graduate, and I was one of two chosen to give the graduation speech. So
that's pretty special.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. That is so cool.
That was pretty dope. That's one of the highlights of this entire 10-12 year experience. So so we were on the stage and with some phenomenal people. Melissa Bradley from 1863 Ventures, Asai Pompey from Goldman Sachs. She's the head honcho. But then she does have a John Rogers who actually runs the Goldman Sachs Foundation. So I think he's the chairman and she's the president. And David Solomon was there too, who's the CEO of Goldman Sachs. And so we're all on stage together. Intense. Right? And I was just so this is dope. So I was supposed to do a 3-minute speech. It went on for 6 minutes.
Yeah. That's cool, though. You took the opportunity. Yeah.
And then so after it was, after the speech was said and done, I was in tears or whatever. And I get back to I'm walking back to my seat, introducing, the next person. And I get a standing ovation from all these people. And I'm just for me? The fact that I motivated, all these women, and, it was a great experience. It was a super dope experience.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah.
That sounds really special.
It was.
I mean, and you've had such a path to get to that point, and then you're going through all these pitches, and so wow, that's really intense. That's very cool to hear, though.
And there's even more after all that.
Yeah. So you go from Goldman Sachs. You're doing these pitch competitions. So what's the next?
The next one was Beyonce's foundation was doing.
Beyonce?
Okay. Beyonce's foundation, Be Good Foundation, was doing. So for 10 cities that she was doing a concert in, she was also uplifting Black businesses in each one of those cities. So I had applied for that, and I got into the Chicago one. Okay. So this story is wild. I don't know if you have enough tape for this, but so I get in. So I'm one of, is it 100? It's 100 in each city.
Okay.
So I got into the Chicago one. So I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's all good. That's the upside of doing a podcast. It's sort of, well, you can edit it, but also it's it's kind of like a real conversation. Right. So it's
Yeah, so for the Be Good Foundation, so I got into Chicago for 100, and there was it was $10,000 that went to 10 people in there. So I didn't know if I won or not or whatever. So I don't fly. I take the train.
Okay.
So I have to take the train from Cleveland to Chicago to go to a luncheon.
Like you're talking Amtrak.
Yeah. So
No way.
you'll see all my videos are all me traveling somewhere on Amtrak. I don't fly. So
Amtrak's cool though. I mean, like
Amtrak is cool.
Yeah.
Amtrak's cool. So we had a bad storm the night before
in Cleveland.
Okay. And so I'm supposed to go to this luncheon of that day. And I told you my daughter lives in Chicago.
Yeah.
So the train is not coming. And the train is just not coming. And I didn't know if I won a grant or not. So I needed someone there to represent me. So, we find out that a tree fell on the track between Buffalo and Cleveland.
Yeah.
So the train wasn't coming through because they had to clear the track. So I called my daughter and I'm like, you have to go to this luncheon for me. She's a super anxious kid. She doesn't like to be like, what? You're changing my plans for the day? So she jumps up, she gets dressed, she goes and she represents me. I make it there at the very end of the luncheon. I didn't win one of the 10,000. That's fine. But that's just a little something I could put on my resume. I got in as one of the 100.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was there and she represented me, and it was a really dope experience for her.
Yeah, that is
cool. So we just hung out in Chicago for the day, but I had to come back. So I got into 10,000 small businesses for Goldman Sachs. But I also got into another program at the same time for WeBank. So WeBank does certification, national certification for women-owned businesses.
Okay.
And they had a national Black business pitch competition. And I was doing that one in Goldman Sachs at the same time. And Our Village United had a program. If you were part of the Be Good Foundation, of each one of those stops, you got to do this next program called Our Village United. So I'm doing both programs at the same time, like a lunatic.
I just can't even, so can you break down, so what's you're running this business, you have all these subscribers. You already talked about the Browns thing and how it kind of gets overwhelming, but now you're going to all these classes, some of them in person, some of them over Zoom. What do you do? How are you even scheduling that? Or
you just go.
You're even doing it now. I'm
yes,
pretty sure. Yeah, because I see you all the time.
You just go.
Yeah.
You're just I just have, and sadly I have 2 calendars. So I have 3 calendars. And so I just merged 2 of them. One of them won't merge with the other one, but I just I just wake up in the morning, what do I got to do today?
Yeah.
So when I was doing all those programs at the same time, I started my day at 4:00 in the morning, because I have
to
you
get up at 4
every
day?
Right. Well, not anymore, but back then I was. Well, a year ago. But yeah, so 4:00 in the morning, I'm doing my social media because I got to promote my business. I'm figuring out what do I have to ship for the day. And so, I would go to class, do my homework, and go to work. And that was just my cycle. And my oldest daughter had moved to Chicago, so I didn't have to take care of her during the day. And the youngest one was at school at OU in Athens. So it was just me. And I was able to just I'm just
I guess that makes sense because if your kids are both out, then your schedule's real fluid.
Yeah.
But still, that's a lot to be juggling, and I'm sure they conflicted all the time.
Yeah, there were definitely conflicts, and like I said, I'd be doing 2 things at one time and listening to 2 different meetings at the same time. But it was, I just kept doing all the things at the same time. So I think I did WeBank, I did Our Village United, and then so while I was in Goldman, then I had 2 more come up because Goldman Sachs 10,000 small businesses, I think lasted 2-3 months maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, so those other programs, they ended very quickly. So I was able to do the next one, and then I got into this one for Walkstar. So it's women of color, and it's an investment banker who invests in women of color businesses, but there are men in the program as well. So that one was virtual meetings, and the huge benefit of that. Well, then so I was doing Walkstar, Goldman Sachs, and then Chain Reaction came at the same time, right? And I was I can't say no to any of these things. So I'm doing all 3 of these programs and running my business at the same time, and taking phone calls from the children at the same time. And so I end up with so I ended up finishing up Goldman Sachs and then going into chain reaction. And what was really cool about the Walkstar one is that the investment banker gave you 30 minutes of her time. What do you want to talk to me about?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Like the actual person with the money.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay.
So I'm like, let me be very intentional about what I want to talk to her about. And so I told her, I said, hey, I got this pitch coming up for 40 grand. Can you look at my pitch?
Yeah.
And like, she went through my presentation, like slide by slide, and was like, take this out, move this, do that, say this, poise yourself like this. And like, I think it was a huge benefit to me when I pitched, you know?
Yeah.
Because she even said things like, when you're waiting for your pitch, just like do a Superman pose and like,
waiting.
Oh, wow. She was like, get yourself psyched up, just like, because I was like nervous and I'm like praying, and then I'm like, oh, what did she say? And then like I did this Superman. I'm like looking in the mirror, and I know people are like freaking lunatic, but I'm like getting myself, you know, just psyched up for the day. And she was telling me like, watch what you say. Don't say like, I think. You know, don't say we might, you know, say things like, I know, I believe, I'm confident. And, you know, she always referred to men as bros. She's like, because when the bros do it, they don't say, I think I'll make $1 million. They'll say, I'm confident, I know. And she was just, you know, so I usually do my pitch with like my chef coat on.
Okay, yeah.
But a lot of conversation with 1 Million Black Women is to start seeing yourself as the CEO of your business so that you make decisions. So I was like, I'm not going to wear my chef coat. I'm going to wear a blazer because my colors are red and white. So I put on a red blazer, and, you know, so I went in there and like my pitch completely changed because I had some fierce competitors for sure. So I knew I had to do something extra special. And I think that conversation just took me to the next level when I pitched that day.
Yeah. So tell me about that pitch. So there's like, so that's good though. She gives you this advice, and there is a lot to be said about like perceived confidence.
Yeah.
Like even if you're like anxious in the moment or whatever, you like tell yourself I'm fine.
Yeah.
You like strike a pose. You get dressed in a way that's gonna promote that. So there's like something to that. So you're getting yourself built up, and so you go into pitch day. So what does that look like?
Oh, pitch day was super fun. So we didn't get to watch each other's pitches.
You don't? Okay.
No. So
do you like that better or worse, you think?
I liked it worse.
Worse, okay.
Yeah. So, and we did get to choose like what order we wanted to go in. So I said, I'm either going first or I'm going last.
Yeah.
So like when that email went out and was like, hey, you get to choose, like I ran on there really quickly. And I'm like, am I going first or I'm going last? Where's the last first? I was like, I'm going to go first.
Okay.
So I went first.
You went
I'm the first person in.
Wow.
And yeah, it was crazy.
Wow.
So I'm the first person in. And this one was kind of cool because you never want to read your notes when you're pitching, right?
Yeah.
Because you should know your business that you don't have to read off of a piece of paper. But in my hip pocket, I did have my financials in my hip pocket just in case they asked me a question about it. But the way that it was set up was like your presentation was on two screens, one that was in front of you and one that was behind you. So I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Okay.
So the judges are looking at the one that's behind you.
Okay.
But if you needed to reference, you could see your pitch in front of you. So I was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Like see what you look like. Okay, that makes sense.
So not yourself, but your actual PowerPoint presentation.
Oh, like
my PowerPoint presentation
cool.
was in front of me.
You can see where you're at.
Right, and behind me too.
That's interesting.
So, but I had already practiced that. I didn't want to look at that. I was going to make eye contact with the judges because there were 5 or 6 of them. There might have been 6 judges up in there.
And so you're practicing like giving each one their time.
Exactly. And so, you know, but there was one person that was over in the corner. I think it was Lisa from Magnet, maybe. She's like over in the corner. Or was it Maria? I'm sorry, I don't remember who was that person, but she was over in the corner. I never made eye contact with her or whatever. But
you're like, you get paranoid. You're like, oh, I should have looked at her.
Right, and you know, because afterwards you think about all the things you didn't do, right? After the pitch, but the pitch was really good. I brought samples because for the impact program, I had brought samples though too. And so this time I brought like hot chocolate already made. I found these little bitty canisters.
Okay.
So everybody had an individual can of hot chocolate.
Really?
Which is now something I want to do for the holiday season. I'm trying to buy them so that I can, this will be like our gift box for the holiday season with this little tin can that I bought. So
is it insulated? Is it like
it
like
is,
a
but only
Yeti
for like
type thing?
but only for like 8 hours.
Yeah.
So it's like this, it's this little
cool.
silver can, and so I'm trying to get them branded, like, or I might just like personalize it and put your name on it. So we're trying to figure out what that looks like for the holiday season. But they all got marshmallows, they all got cocoa, and then another bag of cocoa to take with them. And so I pitched, and I felt much more confident because people are always like, "Are you nervous?" I'm like, "No, I love this stuff."
You're on stage and you're pitching.
Yeah.
Do you get in are you like a fighter? You get in there, and it's like it's like the nerves go away, and you're confident.
You know what's funny is I was thinking about this when you're pitching, if people want things to be perfect, I think it's in your best interest that something goes wrong.
Yeah.
Because it breaks the ice.
That's a good point. Yeah, if you do something super awkward,
right.
You're like, well,
yeah. So
that's gonna be me now.
Yeah. So for the impact program, one of the judges had gone to the restroom. So like the presenter was kind of trying to buy time before I went.
Yeah.
And then I was like giving out the samples to the judges, kind of like made it like broke up the tension of the moment. So I was a little more relaxed from then. But like Chain Reaction, because I went first, they were still getting settled, and I was in the room, and I just started saying hello to individual people while I was in the room. So it kind of like released that tension. It wasn't like I had to walk in and go.
Right.
So I was
wasn't like you stepped on stage and
right.
they're already staring.
Exactly.
Okay. That's kind of interesting. That's
right.
Cool.
So they were settling in. And so I thought about that, and I was like, yeah, I think you want something to go wrong to just like, oh, okay. Because I'm I think I'm hilarious. So to start with a joke or whatever. And that's one of the other things that I learned too.
Start with a joke?
No, seriously.
Okay. Right.
But there's just different storytelling methods, right? Yeah. And so the one I fell in love with is the hero story, right? So, and it's not you are the hero, but the hero meets the guide. So the person with the problem meets the guide, and you're the guide. And I'm a huge Star Wars fan. So like I'm Obi-Wan and my customer is Luke, right?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Even though I lean to the dark side more often. Yeah. I'm Kylo Ren fan, Darth Vader fan.
That's fair.
But so I really leaned into like the hero, the hero meets the guide, and like what is the problem that you're trying to solve for the hero of the story. So that's kind of how I tell my story. And then I really just started telling the story because my original pitch was like what we're doing right now, how I started and how I got to this Etsy point and then launched the Marshmallow in a Month Club. But I really just started talking about all of the pitching that I've done, all the mentoring that I've done. Here's where it's taken me.
Okay.
So I really thought that was like the period to like my story for pitching, but apparently not, because I found myself in another program. But
right now. Well, before you get into that, so you win this competition. Yeah. What is that moment like?
Oh my God.
That had to have been crazy.
Yeah, we set up at the LaSalle Theater, right? So everybody has a table and we're all setting up.
LaSalle, like over here?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So because Collinwood is one of the places that Chain Reaction has invested money into. So
185th is awesome now.
Right. Kristen Barnes, her Sweet Bean chocolates are over there, right? And you told me about her rosemary chocolate.
It's my favorite chocolate.
Oh my God. I went over there and I was like, I need 4.
Yeah. That's the best chocolate I've ever had.
And I don't share them. It's so freaking delicious.
They're good.
So we're at the LaSalle Theater and, kicking it with Kenny. He's just great personality and just like so what was seen on TV was different from being in there because like it's a big venue. It's kind of hollow in there. We're walking around and talking to each other and, just, asking each other about how'd your pitch go? Because we didn't see each other's pitches. And like he goes to announce like the first winner, right? And I'm just like, don't let it be me. I don't want it. Like I'm telling myself, I don't want 10 grand. It's $10,000. Yeah. I'm like, I don't want it. I don't want it. I get that. I get that. Don't call my name. Yeah. And then and then we're going on and on and on. And he does the 20,000. I was like, I don't want that either. Don't give it to me. I don't want it. And so when he called the name for, It's a Wrap with Jeff, I was just like, I won this thing. Because Jeff is like, he's a fierce competitor.
Yeah.
Fierce.
Yeah.
Like I've seen, he's won Impact as well. And when I saw his pitch at Impact, I was like, he won.
Yeah.
And like the person who came after him, I was like, oh, that's bad for me. But he like wraps cars and windows and stuff like that. So when he introduces himself, he's like, I'm the greatest rapper that ever lived, right? And I was like, oh, that was so freaking good. And so
that is good. I like that.
That's cool. Right. So when I saw him that he was in Chain Reaction, I was like, I gotta take this guy out. So there was one day where we both stayed behind and we're like talking to the mentors that were there, right? And like he's talking to one, I'm talking to the other one, and I'm like, and I'm like paying attention to what he's saying.
Trying to pick up some point. Okay.
And then she was like, so are you done? I'm like, Jeff's still here, so I'm gonna stay.
That's awesome.
And I see him smirk, right? Because he's looking at me like I'm a fierce competitor because he saw my pitch on YouTube.
Yes.
So, a lot of people reference it. And so he's like, yeah, I saw what you did. And I'm like, yeah, I saw what you did. So when he was announced as the winner, I was like, I got this.
Yeah.
I know I got this. So when they go to do like the prize winner, I did not want to, because like the camera's on everybody. So I'm looking away. I'm just genuinely like, it's gotta be me. It's gotta be me. It's gotta be me. It better be me. It gotta be me. And then all I heard was of the month club. And I was so freaking like, and I lost my voice. It was the weirdest thing because everybody keeps asking me, were you nervous on camera? I was like, I genuinely could not speak. It was the craziest thing. Because when you hear Kenny, like, he's like, she'd like to thank her family. And
because you can't talk.
I can't talk. I'm like trying. I'm like, I really could not say anything. I was just so, I don't know, like, not that I prepared anything to say, but I just didn't know what to say. I hate the word overwhelmed, but I was just so like, it was just pure amazement, just pure.
Awestruck.
Oh my God. It was so freaking, it was one of the better moments that I've ever had. It was really good.
Oh man, I can only imagine. Oh yeah. I remember, and I didn't really think about it till like later on, but I think I saw you maybe later that day or the next day or something. You came in the kitchen and you were still kind of like unpacking from that. And I was like, this is I remember making a note of it being like, oh, she's like pretty different right now. But then as I was researching, I was like, oh, no wonder. Because I was all stuck in my own mind. I was like, it's Christmas or whatever. And then like all this stuff. But wow, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah. And it was real. That whole Chain Reaction experience was, because we all did Kicking It with Kenny, right? And then we had like our tables set up, and this is before the actual pitch or whatever. So we had our table set up, and there was this woman in this room who was like walking around to the tables and whatnot, and she's like asking all these questions, and I'm just like answering her questions, and just being my goofy self or whatever, and like. I'm not even thinking like, who is this woman? But then later on, I was like, who was that woman that was walking around asking us all these questions? And so then Kenny announces like that the Christmas Connection is giving away a free table. And I'm like, what? And she was the person who was giving away this free table. She was walking around asking everyone questions because she asked me, she was like, and let's see, I do stupid things. I never say no. Right? And she's like, if you had to make like 10,000 marshmallows, would you be able to do it? I'm like, heck yeah. I can't make 10,000 marshmallows. And then like, so I got a free booth. Like he's announcing, he's like, and the winner is Marshmallow of the Month Club. And I'm like, what did I win?
Yeah. Oh,
so I win a booth at Christmas Connection.
That's big.
That's huge.
Yes.
Listen.
Free booth there is
a free
huge.
Booth in like a prime location. I was on the aisle. You got Kenny coming out and like he's got you on camera. And so now people are coming through. So once again, my kid's in Chicago and I'm like, you gotta come down and help me. Right? And so she goes into salesperson mode again, writes her little script in her head and and she's just selling out. But I gotta get ready for this. So that was I think that might have been late September. people have been preparing months for this event.
Yep.
I've never been to Christmas Connection. I have no clue what's about to happen to me. And so, they give you all the things that you have to buy to get ready for your booth or whatever. So I'm like, you have to like have carpet on the floor. And so I'm like getting everything together. I'm like, what are we going to sell? I can't do 10,000 freaking marshmallows.
The amount of molds and top and the bottom. It's like, I gotta get these in 7 days.
It was so bananas. So I'm just like, so I had like little samples of cocoa that we sold for maybe like $3. On Friday, we sold them for $3 and then maybe $5 on Saturday because they were just selling.
Yeah.
Because like, when Kenny shows up, like people show up.
For
like,
sure, yeah.
People are always like, Keith Lee, this and that. But if Kicking It With Kenny shows up, like people are coming, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, he did that for us. And like people were just like, hey, I saw you on Kicking It With Kenny. And then my daughter's like, hey, you want to buy this? So we had samples out. And I mean, we were selling so much cocoa that we were actually packing cocoa right then and there.
On site?
On site.
You have that machine going?
Yeah.
No way.
So I had the sealer going.
Yeah.
I was just like, we're packing individual cocos. We're slapping stickers on stuff. We're throwing it up to her and she's just boom, boom, boom selling it. And so it worked out really, really well. I don't think I would ever do it again.
I went there not that long ago for the Home and Garden show.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't even know how you'd set up.
Right. And that's like a week, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That one is a long one.
And so I was thinking about you when I was there. Because like you said, 10,000 marshmallows or all that cocoa.
Yeah. So we didn't sell any marshmallows. We just did cocoa.
Yeah. That makes sense.
It was easier to do. Easier to do. And I didn't have my larger bags there either. So we were just like filling bags and just like selling cocoa. So it was pretty dope.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so that kind of brings us up to the present now. And so what are some things you're working on? What do you?
One more cohort.
About the can.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Well, before that, so with Walkstar, so at the end of the Walkstar program, which ended in January, I think. So January, I launched in Myers, Fairfax.
Oh yeah,
so,
yeah.
Yeah. So Myers, Fairfax was in January, and then Walkstar, they partnered with a company called Ghetto Film School, right?
Okay.
Which actually has, I think they're in London, New York, and California, if I'm right. So Ghetto Film School takes high school kids and teaches them the film industry for free while they're in high school.
That's kind of cool. That's
right?
Different. Yeah.
Yeah. So they had like a grant and you had to pitch to them. And if you won the grant, you got like a 90-second commercial produced for you.
Really?
Right?
That's okay.
So I'm a competitor. Like, let's go. So only 5 of us were chosen.
Yeah.
And I was one of the 5 that were chosen. And Chain Reaction, Marissa from Capsule, she was in Chain Reaction. She was also in Walkstar with me. So these 2 Cleveland businesses in this program. And she got a commercial produced too. So I went to New York to get this commercial produced. So that was super fun. And then the Urban League through UBiz, they have a new program. Well, they had it last year. It's called Black Women in Retail. And I said, I don't want to do any more of these cohorts.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't say no to this one.
Yeah.
So I applied for that one and I got into Black Women in Retail. So that's really like helping me understand like going from one store to like now if we get into another store, can we handle 40 stores? What does that look like? Do we need a co-packer? Do we have enough packaging? Can we have the right amount of inventory so that we can produce the cocoa? So it's a really good program. I'm enjoying it for sure.
That makes sense. So it's like the cocoa, so you got the box going to your subscribers. Is the cocoa more of, that's your like wholesale retail kind of thing?
Yeah, so that's going to be wholesale. So it is direct to consumer. So we have it on Amazon and we have it on Etsy. We do better on Etsy financially. Like we're more profitable on Etsy than we are on Amazon.
And is that because of the cut or?
I think, well, it's the cut and it's, I pay for advertising on Amazon and I'm not really paying for any advertising. So the Etsy customer is much more intentional. They're like,
they know what they're doing.
They're looking for a gift and they're like the ads, like I'm sure ads do work really well on Etsy, but they're going in and they're typing and they're looking for something very specific. And like if 6 things pop up for them, like it's about how your listing is, right? So and so I've been on Etsy since 2018, maybe, I think 2018, and I have a 5-star review. Like,
cool.
yeah, so I have just everybody's just like 5-star reviews. So the Etsy customer, they love you differently than the Amazon customer.
Yeah.
Like the Amazon customer is like, this was whack. And the Etsy customer, they don't like it, they don't say anything, right? But like when they love it, they love it.
Well, the Etsy is, I guess to me when I'm like on there, it is kind of like, it's like the farmer's market. Like you're the person that comes to the farmer's market that sees you every week.
Yeah.
Like that's like an important person for like being sustainable as a business. But that you're right, it's like a different person. They're coming for you.
They do.
And then whereas I see that Amazon's probably just like,
Yeah, because I think Amazon customers, I mean, I'm an Amazon customer and seller, but I think when they come on there, they think they're buying from Amazon.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And the Etsy seller knows I'm supporting a small business.
Yes.
They even like when they leave reviews, they'll say like Chef Farrell, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
So it's almost like we have a personal relationship. And you can kind of control your messaging to them too. So I got into the habit of like, if they bought from me, I just responded with like, thanks for your order, look out for your tracking number, right?
That makes sense.
Rather than something automated, just really just like responding to them, or you can send them messages and you don't have to, I mean, you're professional, but you're delighting your customer, so it's a different customer, but it's also a seasonal customer. Whereas on Amazon, I sell all year long.
That makes sense. Yeah, because people kind of go to Etsy to look for gifts, like you were saying. Yeah. Whereas Amazon, that makes sense why you'd run ads too on Amazon, because you're trying to come up as like the first hit when people are like custom marshmallows or something like that. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so you're moving more into retail. You're in Myers. What's that path look like? Are you reaching out to more stores now? How do you even like how do you even get on that journey of like pitching a store?
Well, I did it wrong. And so I'm learning how to do it right. So I did just like blindly sending out like samples. Like, so I got a list of, different retailers, not the buyers, but just retailers. And I got the address, and I'm just like, to the attention of the buyer, and I'm just like sending out samples. So I probably did maybe 17 of those to date. And really haven't gotten any response. But like going on the back end and doing filling out vendor applications for like Wholesale Thrive, and but they all have different seasons when they review your products. So that it becomes a full-time job really to understand like, when do the retailers actually want to look for cocoa? So they're not looking for cocoa in January. The season's already over.
It's over.
Right. So I think June is going to be a better time for me to start reaching out to people. So the responses that I did get back were like, when we get closer to fall, we're going to look at you. Right? So you really have to understand like, when are those line reviews, I think is what they call them, to understand like, when do they want to find seasonal products? When are they looking for cocoa? And then find the right buyer to get in touch with. And before you send the sample, say, hey, can I send you a sample? Because you really want to build relationships. I mean, as an entrepreneur, everything that I've learned has been about building relationships with the subscribers that I have. Like if I see they're on their last box, I kind of like send like a message to them to keep them coming, or just building those relationships and asking questions and surveys. And I have a private Facebook group for them, so we kind of like can talk and chat and just really. So when you're going towards buyers, you have to have relationships, as opposed to just, because I had no idea like thousands of people are trying to get their product into grocery store. Like thousands. Of people.
All the time.
All the time. So I started joining more groups, and there's one group that's small and one group that's very large that you get lost within it. But the small group, we meet monthly, and like we break out into groups. And I ended up in a group with a marshmallow maker. I'm like, how the heck is that even possible? And they were on Shark Tank, actually.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, they were on Shark Tank, and I ended up with a room with the woman who makes Wonder Eggs out of Whole Foods. She's in Whole Foods. She's huge. And she was like, get on LinkedIn, and I'm like, she's like, get on LinkedIn. So I'm on LinkedIn now, and like, I'm very, I'm commenting, and I'm much more intentional on LinkedIn. She's like, people are on LinkedIn looking for products. So I've changed my whole like LinkedIn game.
That is interesting. Yeah, LinkedIn I've been seeing is kind of taking a shift from like being a hiring platform. It's like a true social media now. So
But it's B2B.
But it's B2B,
truly B2B that's on LinkedIn.
Interesting. Can you like speak on that? Like what, like, because for a long, even when I was in college, they like acknowledge social media, but they're like, that's not like real, like you can run stuff on there, but you got to do like business plan, you got to do these things, which those all like the traditional things are important, but can you speak on like social media? Has that been like big for you? And
well, what's interesting is like, you don't have to have $100,000 to make money on social media.
Yeah.
Like I think I have maybe 1,800 people on my Instagram, right? Yeah. So just selling constantly to the same people makes you money, right?
Yeah.
Of course, you want to grow big and have like more brand awareness for sure. But LinkedIn is really, I'm sharing my journey on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people say that they don't want it to be a diary.
Yeah.
Like, you know, they don't use it as a diary. So a lot of people are trying to post like, I'm the authority and I'm the subject matter expert. And so that's not my game plan on LinkedIn. So on Facebook, I position myself as a thought leader and a subject matter expert for sure.
Yeah.
But on LinkedIn, I'm just really showing like what my journey has been so far. And because sometimes they do purchase for the story, right? They purchase you, not the actual product,
like
right?
A corporate place looking to like give their employees like a special thing.
Exactly.
And like, this lady has a nice story.
Right.
Yeah.
And support small business. America loves small business.
Yeah.
I don't think we even realize like how much we do shop small.
Yeah.
You know, because even when you go into Walmart, there's small businesses that sell to Walmart, right? And like I get my croissants from like the same local bakery, like when I go, you know, so there's just a lot of small business that we support, whether it's from coffee to pastries or, you know, breads but we do shop small more than we realize.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's important.
Yeah.
Let's see. So in Cleveland, we have a pretty strong community of makers and artists. What's one piece of like tactical advice, like something that's like you could really use that you could give people in Cleveland right now that are getting started?
Ooh, the entrepreneurship community is an amazing community in Cleveland. I would say if you're at the level where you can get into Jumpstart and start working with Jumpstart, that's an organization. But it's like all these small organizations. I think we're special between Columbus and Cleveland. Like we're really special because when I talk to people from other states, I'm like, you got to find your Jumpstart, right? You got to find like these organizations that want to work with entrepreneurs and like have the money to help you grow your business, like looking for those. But so there's so many businesses that help you. SBDC is where I started. ECDI and the Women Business Center is another good one. Jumpstart for sure. When you hit then Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses is a must. You must do that program.
Okay.
Like, and I think for all of these, it's really like a revenue of $75,000 a year.
Okay.
So it's like, make that the goal. If that's the first goal, like how do I get to 75,000 so that I can get into some of these programs? And then from there, there's EOA and EO, which is an entrepreneurship organization. And that's when you hit that 250,000 annual revenue. But what's crazy is that when you start networking with these people, you start to realize how possible this really is.
Yeah.
Getting to all these different levels of financial success, you know, or just success in general. But there's just, it amazes me how many people work for themselves. I was pleasantly surprised by that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is possible. I can keep going and doing this, but yeah.
Awesome. Well, I just thought about this because you kind of brought that up, and we talked about earlier taking the word soulpreneur out of your vocabulary. And it is like a lonely path a lot of the time when you're trying to do your business, but that's like a good point that you're making. And I wondered if you could speak on it, but like being part of the community takes away some of that loneliness, I guess. And so, I mean, you found yourself, you think, so that's like big for you, connecting with people and.
Yeah, and I find myself, this has become outside of my comfort zone. I've become this new person where I'm very social, which I am a social person, but like if I can choose between sitting at home and eating chips and going out, I'm sitting at home eating my chips. But so like Jumpstart just had their 20th Impact program, and I went at the House of Blues. and like I don't carry business cards. I have a Popple, so I have a digital business card or whatever. So I saw people, right, that I knew, and I made sure that I went. And these are people who have money in Cleveland, right? They have dollars to spend, or they're connected to the dollars. And I'm like, hey, remember me? And I'm greeted with like hugs now. I'm like, this is so dope that they remember me. And I'm like, hey, and we also have hot chocolate, and hey, da, 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 da. And so just networking is not something that I would have done more than 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I was probably okay with just sitting by myself doing my business. I got some money coming in, blah, blah, blah. But now just showing up and being in those rooms and networking with people, like it's for some people, it's very uncomfortable. I really don't know the why I got so comfortable with it, but like I'm thankful that I did get comfortable when I see decision makers in the room, and like I just
get those touch points.
Oh man, because you never know, when they need what you're providing, right? You just never know.
That makes sense. You never want to assume that they don't or something.
Right?
Get yourself out there. Well, that makes sense. I really appreciate you doing this with me. Do you want to, how can people find you right now?
marshmallowthemonthclub.com.
Okay.
And there is a try our cocoa. There's a link for that as well. But at the moment, marshmallowthemonthclub.com. And Joy Craft Cocoa is out there too, but that takes you directly to Amazon.
Takes you right to Amazon?
Yeah.
Fairfax Myers?
Oh, yeah, right?
So you could go there and actually shop it?
Yeah.
I went there, I saw your display. I was like, this is so crazy. I know the person that it was the first time where I was at a grocery store, and I was like, I know the person that put this in the grocery store.
Isn't that wild though?
It was very bizarre.
I appreciate you saying that, because there are like this group that I'm a part of, the Wonder Women of food, right? So the Cleveland ketchup is part of that, and so I've switched my mustard to Cleveland ketchup's mustard, right? Yeah, so I'm in Giant Eagle. I'm like, hey, I know them,
people,
or like Tina from Terranian Herbs, right? So I like grab her pita chips, and I'm like, hey, I know this person. So it is pretty cool.
It is cool that you're like friends with the person,
right? Yeah, but then you also realize like how many small businesses like make up like these bigger stores, right? And that it's possible, that it's really possible. So, but in Myers Fairfax, we're all the way in the back, because oddly enough, they don't have any other cocoa brands. So like we're not merchandised in with other cocos. We're the only cocoa brand that's at that particular market, right?
Awesome. Yeah.
So you have to go straight to the back, past the dairy, and then you'll find our cocos back there. And sometimes marshmallows. I got to do better about that with the marshmallows, but
that sounds good. Well, thank you so much.
Oh no, thank you, Jeff. This was fun.
I had a good time too.
Awesome.
So, all right.
Thank you.
Cool.
You're funny.